The opinions expressed in this video reflect the opinions of the participants only and do not reflect the opinions of the producer or the NYU School of Law. The NYU School of Law and/or New York University in no way endorse this video. Established in 1835 in Greenwich Village, the NYU School of Law is the oldest of the 8 schools of law in New York City. NYU Law is considered to be a large law school with total JD enrollment of about 1,300 students. Because of its size, NYU offers a large variety of programs including criminal, environmental, international, and tax law. NYU has a noted faculty, among them philosophy and law professor Thomas Nagel and David Garland, a leading authority on the sociology of crime and punishment. NYU is generally regarded as one of the top 5 law schools in the country and was ranked by the U.S. News & World Report as the 5th top school in the country in the 2010 law school rankings. The school's setting on the edge of Washington Square Park in Greenwich Village is picturesque and in the heart of one of the creative centers of Manhattan. However, attending NYU Law is not cheap, with the average student expense budget coming in at over $60,000 a year. Let's meet some students.
My name is Alejandro Vargas. I am originally from Chile, lived also in Colombia, and I came to the U.S. for college. Went to the University of Minnesota for undergrad and then came to NYU Law.
My name's Anne. I went to undergrad at Brown. I took 7 years off between college and law school, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and ended up deciding to come to law school because I want to do public interest law. And I picked NYU because it's got a great public interest program and a lot of institutional support for public interest students. And I'm a third year.
Hi, my name is Max Reichenberg. I'm from the Netherlands, Amsterdam. I'm doing a 1-year master program at NYU for foreign lawyers. It's about, there are about 400 people in the program, of which about 280, I think, foreign lawyers, which all have finished a law degree in their own country. And they're here to do either taxation or corporate law or international law for 1 year, which allows them to take the bar. Most of them go back after finishing this program, but it's a good opportunity to
because of
be
its
in
size,
the American
NYU
law
offers
and
a
legal
large
system
variety of programs, including criminal,
university, so
environmental,
it's interesting.
international,
My name is Mario
and tax law.
Mandalaro. I'm a
NYU
3L
has a
here at
noted
NYU.
faculty, among them
And
philosophy and law professor
I'm one of
Thomas
the
Nagel
older
and
students in
David
the
Garland,
class,
a
believe it or
leading
not.
authority on the sociology of crime
And before coming to law school, I was a
NYU
finance
is generally
/
regarded
accounting
as one of the
person.
top law.
Had
NYU
a
is
bunch of
generally
record
regarded
companies.
as one of the top 5
Why
law
did you
schools in the
choose
country
NYU?
and was ranked by
NYU
the
is a
US
great
News & World Report
choice for
as
me
the
because
5th
I'm
top school
from the
in
New York
country
area.
in the 2010 law school rankings.
I was
The
born and
school
raised in
setting on
Yonkers,
the edge
and
of Washington
the
Square Park in
local
Greenwich Village is picturesque
flavor of New York
and in
City
the
was
heart of one of
perfect
the
for me.
creative
They have a
centers
great
of
debt
Manhattan.
forgiveness program. I mean, all
However,
debt forgiveness
attending NYU
programs
law is
have
not cheap,
problems,
with the
but
average
theirs is
student
actually
expense
really
budget
one of the
coming in
more
at over
generous
60
ones. And
with the average student expense budget
and they
coming in at
just
well
have a
over
good program,
$60,000
and
a
the
year.
school supports
Let's
it.
meet some
So they have a
students.
public interest center that does career services. They have a really good clinical program, and they just support the students.
It allows me to take the bar, and apart from that, I studied in the US before, and I like the difference with the Dutch university system, which is much more lenient and very flexible and much less serious. So I decided it would be interesting for at least 1 year study here, and the program is very good. I'm in the International Legal Studies program, which is ranked first this year, so that's a good reason, I guess.
One of the things was that I wanted to be in New York City, and so my 2 main schools that I was looking at were Columbia and NYU. And I also wanted to do something related to international law, and since NYU had such a tremendous reputation in international law, I decided that they would be a good choice. Also, it kind of played a factor that I had they gave me a good scholarship, and I also like the environment at NYU a lot.
Do you find the student body to be a young crowd?
I think most people here are between 25, 26, 27, so it's not, I think the majority of people have at least 1 or 2 years of post undergrad experience, but I'm on the outer edge of that with 10 years plus.
Why law school? What do you plan to do with your degree?
You know, I think I came to law school just thinking that a law degree would be a good idea. I would enhance my career. I did business as an undergrad, and having law as a background for doing business, especially when you're trying to do international business and transactional stuff, I thought it was a good thing to do. So that was the main reason why I came to law school, really.
I think I want to do civil public interest impact litigation. So I worked for the ACLU last summer in Northern California. That's the kind of thing I'd like to do.
Approximately like 98% of the American students that finish NYU already have a job at the moment they finish, and most of them stay in New York or go to Washington. So of course it's expensive, but they'll be in the top, mainly in the top paying law firm. So it's doesn't really matter in the long run, I think.
Right. It's sort of going back to an original plan, going to law school. So it was always in my thoughts.
How does NYU compare with your prior educational experience?
It's wholly different. I think the US took the English system of the Socratic method. Compared to the Netherlands, I mean, you're just in class, the professor talks, that's it. You basically have no interaction with professors, whereas here, professors, depends on the size of the professor, but for example, in constitutional law, the professor in a class of 80 people just point out someone, and for half an hour or not even an hour, he'll just keep asking them questions. Which is very different from what I'm used to. It makes sure, especially because he does it random, that people will read what they have to read, because you feel stupid obviously when you're not able to answer the questions. Different professors have different styles. There's some professors that just ask a question and whoever wants to answer answers. There are professors that not even really ask questions, and then there's the Socratic method, which I said makes you sit on the edge of your seat, because if he asks you to answer questions, you want to have some good answers ready.
Have you been called on yourself?
So far, no, not yet. I volunteered a couple of times, but I haven't been really called on. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not really sure, but not yet. Today I thought I was going to be called on, but he didn't.
Isn't school in Amsterdam free?
It would be maybe $2,500 a year, so compared to this, it's free. In the Netherlands, you don't have to have good grades to get into law school. Basically, anybody who wants to get into university and who has finished the highest level of high school can get in. There are only, for a few studies like mathematics and physics, and a couple of these studies you have certain requirements, and maybe medicine, but apart from that, anybody can study anything. So there's no necessity to study well in high school. And again, because there's this tradition of, when you don't have to pay a lot, if you have decent grades and you went, there are only 9 law schools, there's no difference in law school, there are no levels. So if you have decent grades and you're a relatively smart person, you can get into a good law firm. There's no problem at all. So compared to that, yeah, I think there's people are much more driven here. Then again, we don't have college in the Netherlands, so most people go to university or law school when they're 18, 19. Here you go to college, you work for a couple of years, and then it's much more of a conscious choice to go to law school. You're 25, 27, I'm going to become a lawyer, basically. And that again makes you much more driven, I think, because this is what interests me, and I want to become good at this, which will allow me to either get a job at a good law firm, or maybe at an interesting NGO or at the UN or something like that, a human rights organization. So that again is a big difference.
How have you found the faculty?
I think the faculty actually in the top few law schools is very similar. I mean, obviously there's a lot of transition between law school to law school. So the faculty, it's good, it's great. I think what differentiates the faculty at NYU is that faculty come to NYU because of the environment too. I've heard that from actually many professors, that they really just like how students are and how happy they are compared to other top law schools. So I think that also attracts faculty and special faculty to this law school.
I've worked with Jeremy Waldron. I was able to interact with him quite a bit. Bert Newborn was my Civ Pro professor, famous. He litigated the Holocaust litigation. So yeah, they're very approachable. and even the people who aren't quote unquote famous are very approachable, very fun to be around. So.
Do you find the curriculum to be more philosophically or practically oriented?
It all depends. Like in the first year, I think it's a nice mix. I think you cover all the what they call black letter stuff, but you also get to talk about what the policy reasons behind it. Which I think is the best way to approach it. A little bit of both sides. You don't want to focus too much on the policy or too much on just the black letter.
I think in some classes, I think it depends on the teacher. I think that the lawyering program, the 1L course that NYU offers, and the clinical program really focus on practical skills, and a lot of the professors have a career of experience as lawyers, and so they bring that knowledge and that perspective into the classroom. But it just depends. Some professors are much more theoretical and others are more practical.
Because NYU is located in New York, it caters, for a large extent, it caters to law firms. So I think it's less philosophical than, I guess, for example, Yale or maybe even Harvard or perhaps Stanford, because they prepare people more for academia, whereas here, I assume at least 90% of the people go straight into a law firm after law school. So it's relatively, aimed at practical stuff. Then again, it's very academic. As I guess every legal study, you have a lot of case material and philosophy behind it, and especially in the U.S. again compared to Europe with the power of the Supreme Court and with its dissenting opinions, and you can argue a whole lot, which happens sometimes in class about 15 people give the different opinion of why they think the case should be argued this way or different way, and that is pretty academic, I think.
I think it really varies a lot depending on the professor, not so much on the curriculum, because sometimes you'll get a professor that takes an absolutely ordinary class that could be very practical in reality, but they take it through a very philosophical perspective and make you look at it in a different way. So you might be taking civil procedure, which usually would entail just studying the rules of civil procedure, but sometimes they just take it and they make it this complete philosophical study of what entails the civil procedure and what the background is. So it really depends on what your professor is like, so really it's kind of a gamble. I think in general it's pretty much like half and half, a little bit heavy on the philosophical side, but I think I've heard that that's actually a thing of most top law schools. The professors tend to like that more academic, philosophical type of thinking than the practical way of thinking.
Are there many interesting speakers and guests?
What they try to do here, what I very much like, I guess to a certain extent because of the amount of foreign students, they bring in American judges. Last month we had Supreme Court Justice Breyer. We could have a question and answer session with. They had a French Supreme Court judge 3 weeks ago, I think. They have a lot of these kind of things, and they definitely go and people say, well, in my country, our Supreme Court already since World War II cites foreign cases or foreign international cases. And I think that's more touched upon here, I guess, because there are a lot of foreign students than at a university where there would be less foreign students. So definitely I think that makes a difference.
Can you discuss some of the benefits and drawbacks to going to school in New York City?
The biggest thing about living in New York and the worst thing about living in New York is the cost, but I really tell people that it's worth it. New York City is a very unique experience. I had various members of my family live here in New York before they went to other places, and they always told me, if you can live in New York during your 20s, at least for a couple of years, do it, because the experience is absolutely unique. And the feel of the city is just so unique that it's worth spending that much money. Most of us will be making enough money to pay it back, so I think it's totally worth taking that leap.
Well, maybe it might be more easy to really study when you're not in a city, because there are a lot of, you just walk out of university and there's a lot you can do here. So there are a lot of different things you can do, but no, I don't think there's a real downside. I could advise everybody, especially when you're an American student, you've gone to college, for example, in a smaller town, or maybe not even in a town, but just in a campus, I would definitely advise to go to a city to study law, because you'll be studying a lot anyway. So when you're not in class, you can just walk out and go to a theater or concert or whatever, a museum. So that's nice, or bar or club.
It just depends. If you like big cities, then it's really fun, and if you don't, then it's probably kind of a drag.
You could go to all sorts of sporting events and great restaurants and nightclubs, and if you like going to bars, there's nothing better than New York City, especially in the Village. It's a great place to go to school, and you're also not tied to that law school community. So even though the NYU is a very large school, there's always opportunity to go outside the law school community. I mean, it's New York City, it's really expensive. You end up maxing out on your debt. It's, thankfully, especially if you go towards a corporate law career, it's a big chunk, but at least there's a reward at the end of the day.
Can you describe the social life of the school?
We are fortunate, I guess, to be in one of the best areas in New York City in terms of places to go to and have fun, and different places to eat. So I think what we mostly do, and I guess this is, I don't know if a good thing or not, but we probably spend most time in bars and clubs, our free time, and we drink a lot. I think that that's something also that kind of the profession and the career kind of forces you into. You start going to all these firm receptions, and you get used to drinking at random times of the day, and you end up going out a lot like that. But other things, just being in New York City, like spending time in the park, hanging out, just anything you can do, and eating in different great places that are around the Village.
If you want to, there's a lot of social activities that you can be a part of. If a lot of people who go to NYU actually live in the city and have friends outside of the law school community, and do a mix of hanging out with their pre-law school friends and their law school friends. The dorms are right across the street, so there's quite a life right around the school.
What has surprised you most about your experience?
As I said, I'm to a certain extent struck by the maybe intelligence and eloquence of a lot of the students. I mean, even a student that wouldn't volunteer, when they're called upon, they're able to talk for an hour about the subject very well. And even people, when you would see them, they don't seem very outgoing, or they've been sitting all the time like this. When they're called upon, they're able to answer in an understandable and, I guess, good way. So that was something that to a certain extent surprised me. Otherwise, apart from that, I'm pleasantly surprised by the level of the teaching. Professors seem to have a good mix of academia in their background, but a lot of them, for example, have clerked either for Supreme Court or for lower court, but a lot of them, for example, for Supreme Court, and a lot of them have also worked or even still work as a lawyer. So the background of these professors is very good, because they're able to show or to tell you different perspectives of the same thing. They could, for example, tell you, well, when you read, it's like this, and the Supreme Court said that. So, but actually, in theory or in practice, it's not like that at all.
Would you like to live in New York City after you finish school?
It would be interesting to see if I can work here for a while. I like the city, and New York being the nexus of not only legal education to a certain extent, but just law in the US and maybe even in the world. It's a good place to start your career, I think.
Have you been impressed by your fellow students?
I mean, I think it's ideal. I actually never thought I would have this much fun in law school, and that's what I kind of tell everybody that comes here, because people are just incredibly nice here. It's a very collegial environment, and there's whatever competition there is, it's just because of our nature. Everybody is incredibly talented at the school, and so everybody just wants to do their best, but it's not a matter of winning against your partner. It's actually more about helping each other. So I found that that's great about it. I mean, it's a bunch of really talented students that also know how to have fun and are very sociable.
So far, I'm pretty impressed. Again, compared to the Netherlands, I studied at the University of Amsterdam, which was interesting, but especially the first, 2 years. 600 people start every year, of which half drop out after the first year, again half of the second year. So only in the third or fourth year people, you end up in class with people that are actually interested in what they're studying. And here, of course, because it's so expensive and because there's much more pressure and grades are pretty important, and everybody reads everything. And I especially find the JD students very eloquent and very able to express what they want to say in a good way, which is, I find pretty impressive. And of course, with the foreign students, you get a lot of different accents and a lot of people from all over the world, so that is interesting. To a certain extent, it can be annoying, but it's interesting.
I really like the student body here. It's supportive, it's not a really competitive place, though there's always like competitive students. But I will say that I'm probably not like the best perspective because I did come to law school in a place where I already had a lot of friends outside of school. So I've made good friends and met people through journals and classes and stuff like that, but I haven't really met everyone in law school.
Wide variety. You have, your liberal arts types. You have your types that want to go into social or public interest, as they say, and plenty of people who are very focused on corporate and business and whatnot. So it's a big variety of people, and it's what I kind of like about NYU. It's not all one type of person.
I mean, I think it's ideal. I actually never thought I would have this much fun in law school, and that's what I kind of tell everybody that comes here, because people are just incredibly nice here. It's a very collegial environment, and there's whatever competition there is, it's just because of our nature. Everybody is incredibly talented at the school, and so everybody just wants to do their best, but it's not a matter of winning against your partner. It's actually more about helping each other. So I found that that's great about it. I mean, it's a bunch of really talented students that also know how to have fun and are very sociable.
Are journals a large part of student life?
I think most students do a journal, but I don't really know what the percentage is, and I think that you can kind of do as much or as little as you want. Some journals are a much bigger time commitment than others are.
How manageable have you found the workload?
I think their workload is doable, but very challenging. Before coming to law school, I did an MBA program, which I found a lot easier. So, comparison to an MBA program, I think law school is a lot tougher, but it's doable for most people who really like to read and who like to study. And if you like books and you like studying, you could definitely do it.
It was kind of a shocker first year. I must admit it's a different pace from undergrad. A lot more work, and I think it's just a lot more pressure. It's this latent pressure that exists in law school that comes from your peers, and it's not actually that you need to do that much work, because really the difference you notice after you go onto 2L year that whatever work you did in your first year was probably too much and almost unnecessary up to a certain extent, because your grades won't change that much depending on the work you do.
Are you enjoying your experience?
First year I was working a lot, but also going out a lot, which is actually very surprising. Me and my friends used to go out probably 4 nights a week. So we really kept a good balance. Last month before exams always was a tough thing, and we pretty much lived in the library. Second year becomes more of a busy year. It's a lot of work, but unrelated to the subject matters you're seeing and the classes that you're seeing, but you're doing all the stuff. You're doing journals, you're trying to get a job, you're doing all these different things that just take a lot of your time up. And so despite the class load work decreases, everything else kind of increases, so it's still pretty busy, busy year.
Apart from, I guess, going out on a weekend, I play in an orchestra. I play field hockey, which is actually played by men in Europe. But there are some teams there is a league in the Bronx, so that's fun. And yeah, I managed to go, play sports and go to the opera and go to, in the weekend just go out to go to a bar or club or. So yeah, that's definitely possible.
Yeah, you definitely do. I mean, it's up to you how much time or how little time you want to put into what you do and what kind of a course load you want to set yourself up for. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely time to enjoy New York.
How is the weather?
Weather's fine. Lately it's been raining, but New York weather is very varied and a little bit for everybody.
Winters can be bad. This past winter was sort of especially bad and a little long. But really you don't feel it that much. New York City is actually very pretty in the winter too, and seeing the snow in Central Park and all the streets is actually not that bad of a thing.
What are the facilities like that are available to law students?
I think that the school facilities are great. We have buildings the law buildings are great. The technology in them is great. We have obviously access to everything that's NYU wide, so we have access to gyms, 2 gyms in the city. I think the only kind of downside of being at NYU in terms of the facilities that many times they're kind of spread out because it's there's no campus, so you're spread around the city. So if you want to go to a different gym, you might have to walk a few blocks. But then again, a lot of people don't live right next to the law school. So for example, for me, the other gym is much closer to me, so I go to that one instead of the one that's close to the law school. So I think it has some drawbacks, but it also has some advantages, depends on what you want to do. Other than that, I think in terms of facilities, a lot of people complain of the size of the dormitories here at NYU Law, but I think it's New York City. You know, prices are expensive, places are small. That's how the city is. It's worth living like that. You're not going to spend that much time in your room, so I say just go ahead and do it. After the first year, most people move out of school housing. School housing is primarily used by 1Ls, and then some 2Ls do remain in school housing, but I think most people try to get away from school housing.
What advice do you have for prospective students looking at law schools in general, and NYU in particular?
I would recommend going to the best law school you can get into. I know a lot of people are concerned about incurring a lot of debt and cost and scholarships and that, but I think in the long run you're always better off going to the school with the best reputation, best national reputation, because it gives you a lot more flexibility of where you want to work. You know, if you're an East Coast person, you never know, you might have to work in the West Coast, so the more national school you can go to, the better off you are.
Law school in general, know why you're going. I think a lot of people come because they don't know what else to do, and it works out for some people but not for others, and it's a lot of money and a lot of time. But I'm someone who took a really long time to decide, so that's just my perspective. I think it makes the experience of law school a lot easier when you know why you're there. And NYU, I mean, I think it's a great school. I think it's a lot of fun and it's a nice environment. So that's what I have to say. That's my spiel.
Do you think you made the right choice for yourself?
I know I definitely did. Yeah, I've loved it here. It's been the perfect school for me.
I think one of the things you should think about indeed is what you think you want to do during the 3 years you're at the law school, because I mean, I think it doesn't really matter where you go. I mean, professors will be good, people will be, students will be interested. The important thing is, I guess, to a certain extent, what you can do around school, apart from the fact that if you are at the top 5 or 10 or top tier school, it makes it more easy to get a job or a high-paying job. Apart from that, I mean, I could advise anybody who would like to do a JD or an LLM to come here. I have no problem in doing that, I guess.
No, I mean, I think the big misconception about NYU is that it's, because of the campus being spread out, that it's kind of a disconnected kind of a campus, but the way the law school is set up, it's a very close community with the buildings very close to each other, and it's a tight-knit community, even though it's a large school in a city campus.
Unfortunately, what I've noticed actually, which is very sad, is that rankings do matter up to a certain extent. Firms do, for example, I apply for firms. There are people that are interested in other things, but firms do actually look at the top law schools differently than they look at other law schools. And this is, I don't know if they base themselves on the typical US News ranking, but they do look at the prestige of the law school. And I think in general, if you can go to the top 5 or the top 10 law schools, do it. If you can't, it's okay. You can still do great in your career, but if you can, it's going to make it just life this much easier for you to actually get your jobs. And in terms of choosing between the 10 or top 5 law schools, I think it's just a matter of really what type of specialty you want to do, if the law school has a certain focus, and also just the environment, because it really makes a huge difference. I mean, it is 3 years of your life, and they're tough years of education, so you want to be in a place where you feel good, where people are friendly, and that people make your life better. And that's one of the reasons that I think people should consider NYU, because it is a very unique place in terms of its environment, in terms of the top law schools. So yeah, I think it's whoever is choosing between the top 5 law schools, I would definitely strongly encourage to consider NYU versus Columbia, versus Harvard, and versus Stanford. I don't know against versus Yale, because Yale is kind of a completely unique law school in that sense. But among the other four, NYU is definitely a strong candidate.